Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Casper.
All right, let's continue our countdown. I sounded like Casey Kasem there. The countdown continues. Our countdown, top 250 sports moments, games, people, athletes, coaches in America in the last 250 years. We began this countdown earlier this week because it just works out every weekday. We do 10, and it ends on July 3rd, right before America turns 250 years old. So, with first one we did, really quick, I'm sorry. Sorry, Bears fans. You just got jinxed. Caleb Williams is on the Madden cover. So, there you have it. Madden jinx. Boom. Boom, boom. All right, back to it. So, the first one we did was we just did 10 leagues. I think you got to start off by talking about the leagues. You know, the NFL, MLB. A lot of the sports, we're not talking about it if it's not for the league. So that's kind of the basis here. We highlighted 10. There's going to be a lot more, but we did 10 athletes yesterday. And there's going to be a lot more, like I said. So just kind of trickling in some different ones. Let's do coaches for today. Okay? Let's kind of mix it up. So there's going to be a lot of other coaches probably in this thing here too. But these are the 10. So I've got like multiple sheets. If you're watching the video stream, these are just a few of the sheets, front and back. All right, I broke it up in 10s, so it's easy for me to go through each day in that. But let's do some coaches. So again, the basis of this is you can't tell the history of sports in America without mentioning these individuals, or when we get to games or teams or something like that. In this case, it's coaches. You cannot. Now, these aren't the only coaches. So when I go through these 10 that I'm going to hear, and before anybody's like, how could you not have this person or that person? Just wait till the end, okay? So these are, let's just call the first 10. And I'm not ranking them because that's impossible. But, come on, we got to go. We're in Wisconsin, right? Vince Lombardi. The Vince Lombardi Trophy. When you talk about the history of football, when you talk about the history of sports, Vince Lombardi is in the conversation. And in fact, I mean, not just because of the wins, not just because of the championships. We could have a whole show dedicated to the impact that Lombardi had on the game of football, sports culture, outside of football, real world stuff. But when you talk about somebody who is in the conversation as maybe the greatest football coach of all time, he's easily got to be in a top 250 countdown when it's about the biggest sports moments or people in America's sports history. Everybody knows who Vince Lombardi is. Every football fan knows who Vince Lombardi is. We as Packers fans are really lucky that he was the head coach of Green Bay because we get to claim him, right? The trophy bears his name. You go to Lambeau Field and there's a big old statue of him out there. We get to claim that because we're Packers fans. But, I mean, Vince Lombardi is easily on this list. Staying with a little bit of a football run here. I mean, you got to throw Don Shula into this too. You're talking about if the NFL is king, if the NFL is, the most popular sports, however you want, the most wins. Okay, Don Shula did it for a long, long, long time. Baltimore, obviously Miami. A lot of us probably remember him more so from Miami and such. But most wins all time in the NFL. Maybe an Andy Reid could catch him depending on how long Andy Reid is going to continue to coach in that. But, I mean, Don Shula's top 5, top 10 coach of all time in NFL history, and when you have the record for the most wins, yeah, you can't tell the story. You can't tell the history of the NFL without Don Shula in it. So Don Shula is going to be in there. Bill Belichick, come on. All right, Bill Belichick's an easy one. Super Bowl championships, debatable practices, and trying to find certain advantages and edges to win the ball game, and I think that's kind of putting it politely. But again, if we use the narrative, you can't tell the history of this sports or this game without this individual. He belongs there. Bill Belichick. It's between Bill Belichick and Vince Lombardi for people when you throw out there, who is the greatest NFL coach of all time? Who's the greatest NFL coach of all time? A majority is going to go between Vince Lombardi, Bill Belichick. There's going to be others that'll throw maybe a couple other people out there, or other couple, maybe Shula's involved in there too, maybe a Bill Walsh who's involved in that. But the majority is going to be between Lombardi and Bill Belichick. And one more NFL person for this particular portion of the countdown. Mentioned the Bears a little bit earlier, George Halas. You got to throw George Halas in there. I mean, iconic, legendary coach, player, and yes, there's going to be another Packer person coming into this thing here soon. So, but I got to go with George Halas. I mean, one of the bigger, kind of, if almost like a founding father of football, if you will. So, do got to give a little bit of a nod to George Halas, Chicago Bears. I mean, from coach, owner, player, very similar to Lambeau, which I can tell you right now is probably going to be a little bit later on in our countdown here too. So got to put George Halas on there. Going to the college ranks, Nick Saban. I mean, is he the greatest college football coach of all time? For a lot of people, yes. Not for everybody, but yes, for a lot of people, he is the greatest college football coach of all time. And it's hard when you look at, his numbers. It's hard not to make that case. I mean, you look at it, he's got an overall college record of 292 wins, 71 losses, and 1 tie. He's got 7 national championships. It's hard not to say that he isn't the greatest college football coach of all time. Stops at Michigan State. LSU, he won a national championship. A lot of people will remember him more so for his time at Alabama and that run from 2007 to 2023. 19 wins in bowl games. Yeah, if he ain't won, he's easily top 3 in my opinion, but I'd probably put him at number 1 as the greatest college football coach of all time. When you talk about college football and you talk about the history of college football, Nick Saban's on there. You got to put him on there. And the other person that, when you talk about college football and kind of the history of college football, go back to Alabama and Paul Bear Bryant. I mean, when you talk about some of the old school coaches and some of the all-time greats, this is a guy who has 323 wins, 85 losses, 17 ties, 6 national championships, all at Alabama. Was a national champion as a player too. But Paul Bear Bryant, even for casual football fans, casual college football fans, you know the name. You know the name of Paul Bear Bryant. Fun fact, he was the, quote, other end on that Alabama team that featured some guy named Don Hudson. So I'm just throwing that out there too. But he's on that short list of figureheads, if you were to create a Mount Rushmore of college football, is he on there? Has a pretty darn good chance. He's one of those guys that's just attached in history and lore and legendary status in college football. Again, you can't tell the history of college football. You can't tell the history of sports without Paul Bear Bryant. College basketball, I mean, there's a few names on this list here, and they probably aren't going to be big surprises. You got to start with going to UCLA and John Wooden and just the coaching career that he had at UCLA. I mean, you want to talk about a dominant run as a college basketball coach. 664 wins. 10-time NCAA tournament champion. 12 Final Fours. I don't think we are ever going to see a coach in college basketball get close to matching what John Wooden did at UCLA and getting 10 championships. And yes, I've seen the naysayers, the people out there saying, well, look at the era that wouldn't fly in today's era. Nobody's going to get that in today's era. You know what though? I've said it before. I'm now one person that I don't like to compare players, or in this case coaches, from one era to another, because you gotta put them in perspective in the era that they were in. And what John Wooden did and the era that he coached was just absolutely dominating as a head coach with those UCLA teams. 10 national championships. 10. 64, 65, 67 through 73. That run alone, we're never, ever, ever, ever going to see. And then one more in 75. It's not going to happen. He is on the Mount Rushmore of college basketball coaches. And for many people, number one. The other person that may be number one, if it's not John Wooden, is our next one. That's Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski. Again, when I think of college basketball coaches, these are going to be the four names, because I got two more after Coach K. These are the four names that I personally think of right away. If we do our Mount Rushmore of college basketball coaches, these are going to be the names that pop out to me right away. But Mike Krzyzewski, you're talking about 1,200 wins, a little over 1,200 wins, 1,202 to be exact, 368 losses, five national championships. That Duke era, he made Duke basketball a brand. Okay, we talk a lot about these players or teams and such, and like when we talked about Jordan and we talked about some other players and how they've made a brand. Coach K made Duke basketball a brand. Whether you are either a Duke fan or you hate Duke, I don't think there's really any middle ground between the two. You are either a Dookie or you are a non-Dookie. There's no in the middle. They are a team. They are a university, a program that, when even if you don't have a team in the ACC in that league, you're just like, no, I can't stand Duke. How many of us? Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand. There's a lot of people in Duke like, I just, no. I don't want to, I'm not a Duke fan. I can't stand Duke. I can't. We all are probably thinking of some players, whether it's Christian Laettner or Greg Paulus that played for Duke, Grayson Allen. You're like, but he made it a brand. And he won a lot. He won a lot as a head coach. I mean, he has set the bar so incredibly high in college basketball. If John Wooden isn't one, Coach K is probably two. Kind of in the same breath in terms of maybe making it a brand in that, I got to go Dean Smith at North Carolina. You know, just I think it kind of catches some people by surprise. It does to me here too. You know, just two national. I hate to say just two, but two national championships. Went to 11 Final Fours. But when you think about North Carolina basketball, there's two names that pop up when you think about North Carolina basketball. That's Michael Jordan and it's Dean Smith. Again, you want to talk about brands. North Carolina is a premium brand when it comes to college basketball. We talk about the Blue Bloods. College basketball, college football, each of those have those programs are like, when you think about college basketball, you think about Duke, you think about North Carolina, you think about Kentucky, you think about Kansas, you think about UConn. College football, you think about Ohio State, you think about Michigan, you think about Alabama, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. North Carolina. You think about North Carolina. Dean Smith, I think, had a big hand in making that a brand program. Yes, had help along the way with a guy named Jordan, had some talented players over the years too, but he was a very accomplished coach. 879 wins, 254 losses for a 7.76 win percentage. When I think college basketball, I think Dean Smith too. And our last one here, and again, we've got a lot more coaches, so don't say, well, how did you miss this person? How did you miss that? I've got plenty more to get to here in our other ones. But Bobby Knight, again, if you're talking about college basketball and you're talking about the history of college basketball, Bobby Knight's got to be involved in that conversation. If you're writing a history book about college basketball, there's a chapter on Bobby Knight in Indiana basketball. A lot of wins, a lot of antics on the courts, a lot of hot-headedness, no doubt about it. But you also have 3 championships at Indiana and a lot of video clips and a lot of audio clips that you talk about Bobby Knight, and he's got quite the legendary career, a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff too. You know, when you tell the story about Bobby Knight and you talk about the good, you got to talk about the bad. Hot-headedness, throwing chairs, all that stuff. That's all a part of it. But it boils down to, when you think about college basketball, I think about Indiana and I think about Bobby Knight. When you think about college basketball coaches at the Division I level, Bobby Knight's there. Whether you think he's a top coach or not, maybe some people don't because of his antics, and that's fine. That's your choice. That's your opinion. That is perfectly fine. And I'm not necessarily with this countdown picking people because they were just the best of the best or the GOATs and all that. I keep going back to this and I keep harping this. You can't talk about college basketball without having a chapter on Bobby Knight. Whether it's the good stuff or the bad stuff. And the good stuff is that he won 3 national championships. But the bad stuff is also part of his legacy. That kind of made college basketball a very popular entity and a popular sport out there. So those are the first group of 10 coaches. Again, not ranking them because I don't want to get into that, like saying, well, this coach is better than this coach. How do you compare that? How do you quantify that in different leagues and in different eras in this? So I'm not ranking them, but this is just the first group of coaches out there. So we've got 10 leagues. We did our first 10 athletes, and we've done our first 10 coaches. We'll try to get to maybe tomorrow we'll throw in some iconic games, memorable games that if you're going to tell the history of sports in America, it's those games. Or plays, too. I got a category on plays, right? When we think about certain plays in sports history, you think about maybe the Leitner jump shot, was a 92 against Kentucky. It's Tigers chip in 05. Maybe I'm just throwing out random plays that just popped into my head. It's Bart Starr's sneak in the Ice Bowl. Got to throw plays in there, too, when you talk about the history of sports in America in the last 250 years. As always, each of these, if you miss any of them, they are available in episodes of the Man Cave Podcast. So don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast. And if you could be a dear good friend, like on Apple and Spotify, if you could leave a positive review. I don't care if you leave like a recipe or whatever. Just say something nice on there. It helps the algorithms. It really does. You may not think it does. It does. It helps spread the word and get the podcast out there more. 5-star rating and like a positive review. So